Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Xtreme Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have with me from Central Florida, I guess, somebody that's been drinking a lot of Barnabas Collinses lately with the Halloween season around us. And of course, I want to talk about the young 20-something Professor Pixel, who is the only member of the internet community that's watched all 1,225 episodes of the original Dark Shadows. And that's why here on tonight's episode of Xtreme TV, we're continuing our coverage of Mission Impossible Season 1 episodes 13 and 14. And Pixel, this first one, Elena, we've talked about in the past couple weeks some of the episodes where maybe a key member of the four that generally are part of the team that get picked. How some people have been missing here and there, and how that's kind of shown everybody a little chance to shine, except maybe for Barney yet. But here we get one that's just Roland, who basically has to go under the pretense of a lot of time because she's going to be assassinated or killed. A mole, if you will, an extremely hot ethnic woman, as it were, with microfilm, and there's true serum, and there's really bad jazzy fist fight in here, rolling around that Roland loses. This is such an over-the-top, extreme episode. I thought it was hell of a fun, and this episode did something completely smart. They let it just be what you expect out of everything. No tricks, no turns, nothing fancy to it. And they let this hot woman have a ton of screen time. And she's got a ton of credits under her name. She's about 30 years old in here. Wow. Cinnamon, you're gorgeous, but step aside. We've got a new woman here on Mission Impossible. Her name is Elena. Yoda, Ed Brewer. What'd you think of this episode? Take us into it.
Yeah, no, I was intrigued too, because it's such a like tight knit one, because you're basically just following Roland as he has to go ahead and make his moves on on Elena, but try to understand what's going on. I liked the use of imagery to show that she's been hypnotized. She's going ahead and though isn't this the second one that we've already had within the past like 5 episodes?
You know, one of the comments I'll make at episode 14 that I'll just say right now ahead of time is we're starting to see some repeat themes, because yes, we've talked about the Manchurian Candidate, and we didn't dive too much into the MK Ultra aspect of it to bring people along slowly as they listen to this, but definitely is there, because it's a very weird scene when Roland realizes that hey, something's not right when he's posing as the salesman and he's got the test tube there and he's spinning it there, and then that's like a trigger for, and then of course I think they call it the Incan mask there, or Mayan mask at the end, at the big reveal, even though the drink they have is Peruvian. I'm not going to bitch too much about archaeology here. But yeah, it is kind of weird. I'm like, wow, they had some weird shit in this episode.
Yeah, I liked it though. I liked it. You're right. She is very lovely. But
hubba hubba.
Hubba hubba indeed. I also think we have a connection between these 2 episodes, which is love, genuine feelings growing in both of these, but they're done in a different way, from a different perspective for each of them. One is trying to protect her, and the other is being the cheese for the trap.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, because we just talked on some key scenes here. What'd you think of the opening gambit, though, as far as the the setup scene there with the recorder and how we had to get into that, and the swinging singles bachelor's pad that we see? This stuff's pretty good. It never gets old for me.
So, actually, I'm trying to recall it. I think for this one, it was maybe a little too plain Jane. I did like the implication that what's the main guy's name?
Roland.
No, not him. The main guy who always gets the missions.
Oh, you're talking about the guy that owns it there too. That's
Stephen Hill.
Yeah, him. That guy. Boring guy. And the bodybuilder's on here too.
Yeah, I liked the implication that he had some dealings with Elena before, knows her personally, so that's why he can't go on this mission. I also liked the psychiatrist character for this first episode. I think he was a good fit. It wasn't like the one woman from the haunted house a couple weeks ago. Something about her I just didn't enjoy per se, but I clicked with this guy. I think it was a good side character for Roland.
Yeah, so the guy we're talking about who sets everything up is Dan Briggs, who's, he drives a car and he's got this construction thing and he's got the tape and all that. And you're like, okay, it's cool. And I always wondered, again, everyone loves Peter Graves from the University of Minnesota, but he doesn't show up yet until I think it's the second or third season here. I think it's the next season and the rest of them. And of course, the 1980s reboot. So I think, Dan as a character is interesting because he's got this great crib. He brings the people over to it. I'm like, it seems like it's his personal place, but it's got to be one of many. I don't know, but he's only actually here for this very first season, believe it or not. And then it changes a little bit. And so with these characters, like I said before, some have been in and out. But here, the one thing that the episode does do smart, like I was saying at the beginning, is they focus on Elena here, who is absolutely stunning. She's comes from a well-to-do ethnic family, but she's a scientist. So they put her in all these striking outfits. Like they put her in the completely boring, completely non-sexy white lab coat thing with her hair up in these, the big, not quite Barbara Steele-ish, because I think that's the gold standards for black wired rim, or black, plastic frame glasses, but the other ones too. And it's like, you cannot take your eyes off this woman. And the camera focuses on her a lot. She's not just there in a couple key scenes. You see, like, to your point, Roland just basically kind of like, getting all lusty over here, and you can understand it. But it was kind of weird, because at first I thought it was going to be a little more romantic-y, sexy, that kind of way that you can only have in the 60s where you can't do too much. And when they actually start kissing and making out a little bit, it's kind of like really G-rated. Like I've seen more passionate stuff in middle schools, but that's TV back then. But you're looking at her, and when they meet the family and they give them the one drink, which, everybody who's a thug or supposedly a bad guy, they speak to him really menacingly, like, this is the drink of the ancient Mayans. If they would slip it to the prey as they would become weak before they would sacrifice them to the gods. I mean, you give me a shitty line like that, I'm in, but, just don't give me a whole episode full of it, because it really hits home and lets me know, okay, these are the bad guys. The hot woman's the good guy, gal. And let me just watch Roland do his thing, who I said before still seems to have the most fun on the show.
Yeah, no, I concur. Yeah, I just remember when we started this season, I was like halfway with him, but I can see the appeal you had right from the start. He does a great job. And I suppose we should talk about our dear fashion model, Cinnamon, coming into episode 14, the spy with the short tail, right?
Yeah, before we get that, let's just close up with basically saying that the reveal here at the end is you get to see how Elena's been brainwashed, and it's kind of cool in a very undramatic way. And it ends like a lot of these episodes. You get, everything builds up to it. You get him chasing her, and he only has so much time before she's going to get assassinated, which is kind of, they have those built-in time things to all of them, which I really don't like, but you do feel the race against it, as it were. And they make a little reference there at the end or whatever that that's the only problem working in intelligence, is that you can't make anything but friends with people. And he's like, maybe something later on, basically, that means, James Bond, he would have shagged her and that would have been the end. But, this is TV. I don't know if this actress appears in any more episodes, because she's done a lot of TV. She's done a lot of stage stuff. Very beautiful woman, very talented. If we ever do Star Trek, she pops up in an episode or two, and that, and a bunch of other TV shows too, all the way through the 60s, 70s, 80s. And I think she's still around in her early 80s. So good episode, a lot of fun, a little bit lighthearted is kind of how I felt on it too, which I'm going to take this as the better of the two episodes in terms of execution. But I know you want to talk about Cinnamon, this next one, which has, wait for it, before the Mechanic and Charles Bronson, you could argue dueling assassins. But please talk about Cinnamon.
Yeah, because in this next one, the plot is that they have a scientist who's going to speak at a symposium, something like that, and he's been protected by the U.S. government, but he has to speak here, and he's at risk. two assassins are going to be sent after him. One is an older, retired gentleman, and one is the hot piece for Cinnamon to go and lure away. And one of the things that I really did enjoy for Cinnamon in this episode, I like their little brush of a love story that they have in here.
This is horrible. Where
Really?
they're riding bicycles, like they're,
Yeah. See, I liked that because it was different enough, and I was actually holding out hope at the end that he would become one of the cast of characters, not to continue the love story. The actor himself.
The guy was good. He was, and he looked like a heavy. You believed him. I agree with you on that totally.
So I was hopeful towards the end that maybe that something would change, something would grow. They liked him enough to just bring him on. Go ahead, why not? Especially after the last movie we saw, where okay, you can join this life. Let's do it. But no, it ends in the way you think. To go ahead and let you have, well, everybody on the team's going to survive. They're going to achieve their mission. You're right. The former episode is better because this one it's still good, but it's, after everything we've seen, it's an okay kind of good. Like, okay, I've been through this before, but that's nice. That's nice. I wanted something like slightly different. That's all. But oh well.
Yeah, and I think too, like you say, Assassin number one, the young guy here, he's a character actor. I know I've seen him in other places. If you've watched this or you've watched a lot of TV, you'd be like, yeah, he's got that kind of look. Because basically in 60s TV, you go, is it a good-looking, handsome person, gentleman, let's say? Okay, he's going to be a good guy. Has he got any wrinkles in his face, or does he sneer a little bit? Okay, is he ethnic? He's going to be the bad guy. That's, you can call it racist, call it what you want, but generally speaking, that's how you differentiated back then with television and movies to some extent. And everybody has a certain look or whatever. And of course, Cinnamon's supposed to be kind of the femme fatale, but in a classy, elegant sort of way. So she deliberately, despite the fact she has these great outfits, and here she's got a wonderful blue dress on and her hair up, and one scene I'll talk about here in a moment. But you don't get that raw sex appeal from her that, like, say, we got from Elaine in the last one with her hair down and, pouty red lips and everything too. So I did like this episode as well. And yeah, I do find myself comparing with the two episodes that we cover here, but I did like here that Dan basically warns her, hey, look, this dude's the real deal. Don't fuck around. It's the FAFO thing, right? Fuck around and you're going to find out, because I don't want you to be number 31, the 31st kill of his or whatever. And she seems to kind of be like, yeah, whatever, I can handle any man or whatever. But the thing is when they meet, it's in one of those really horrible 60s sets where, like, they're having this giant ballroom party. You could just tell from the camera angles, it's probably about a 20-foot room. And of course, everyone's smoking cigarettes and, wearing stuff and dress up. And I like this in TV. I like to see people dressing up in gowns and, long handkerchiefs and pearls and all that kind of stuff. And they have got the violin people playing around. So it's a nice little cat and mouse game, because she allows him to pick her up, and he's good. He's smooth, to your point. He's not like James Bond kind of carny, but for B-grade Saturday night television, which this show is, this guy's good. And unfortunately, I think the episode lags a little bit because the older assassin, I don't feel like has a lot to really add. Like, there's not, to me, this obvious, say, father figure type of thing or whatever. But it makes it a little weak, even though there's this kind of like love story thing. It's like, are you kidding me? You're not riding bikes on your second or third date. If you're an assassin and this hot woman's picking you up, it's a total smash show. And that's where they can't really allude to it. And I'm just wondering if Cinnamon's going to basically go without sex this entire, not just episode, but series. And the way TV is, it's like, you could allude to it and not, but whatever. I actually thought what was better in this, though, compared to the last episode, and I took it more seriously, was the spy stuff. Because basically what they're trying to do with these two spies is basically kind of like frame them, not take them out, not kill them, not do the easy thing. They're trying to make them look like they're fools, like they're idiots. And so they're devising up this room where there's a cool scene where you see like the see-through mirror or whatever, and Barney's a part of just, making sure everything works so they can get the old spy in there. And then of course at the end they have a struggle and things happen, and you get to see that. And that was kind of cool how they used the pre-internet kind of doxing activity where we take photographs and everything too, because back then it was all blackmail stuff. You go back to Raymond Chandler 100 years ago with Philip Marlowe and all that stuff, Sam Spade, some of those things. That's the dirty element behind all that, would be blackmail, taking pictures of people in compromising positions, setting them up with drugs and hookers and stuff. And so I almost got a little bit of a dark vibe in here when they kind of went to go this way. But damn it, because it's Saturday night television in the 60s, how dark can they get? But no, I agree with you. I think the surprise in this episode was Assassin, number one, the young guy. The old one was, to me, as an afterthought. But it's not bad. I agree with you, and Cinnamon's fine in it, but it just lacks the fun of the last episode, the goofy spy nature. This would be more of a Sean Connery kind of vehicle without sex, whereas the last episode would be more of the Roger Moore one without sex, if you know what I'm saying. That's how I feel about it. Again, to your point, not a bad episode. I like the dueling assassins, but you didn't really need two of them, did you? I don't know.
No, they just had to have some reason to pad it. Like, yeah. Okay, we can't just have her falling in love with this guy. We have to give something the other two characters for the other two characters to do. Yeah. Overall, slight disappointment, but the other episode was good enough to make up for it. I really did enjoy that, especially with Elena maybe throwing herself off a building because she doesn't want to betray, her government.
Yeah, it's talking about, how does this compare to, say, a Get Smart and I Spy, and I Spy, and I Spy, I believe, is the Robert Culp one or whatever. And that I'm not going to say that's a better show than this, because it's been forever since I've seen some episodes, but one of the things I did want to talk a little bit with these episodes, since we're more than halfway through season 1 of the original Mission Impossible, is kind of the backdrop of it. We mentioned some things briefly because we don't dive into the politics specifically of personal thought here on the show. We just kind of talk about if it's relevant to what we're discussing, and then I think it is here. Get Smart was a comedy in the 60s that had a laugh track to it, which I've never liked laugh tracks. And, to me, I understand the programming nature of, hey, every third line in a sitcom, make it a punchline and a setup for a joke and all these stupid things, and the template for it. And I think you and I have talked plenty about the Mission Impossible template, and we've already pretty much got it pinned down, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think a laugh track, like in a Get Smart or a lot of those kinds of shows, especially when you're young, you don't realize that they're making it as simple as possible for you to laugh to, and it's not particularly smart. What this show does do well is, I do think that if you know nothing about war or what was going on at the time, out of World War II, boomers around, Vietnam's coming up, there's always fires going on in the world, right? That they do, even if it's generic, and like to your point, you said repetitive early on, and it's always some Kirplakistan or some dictator in a small country. This basically is saying, hey, the U.S. government gets involved in shit around the world, and here's how we deal with it. It's with an off-the-books operation. There is, to me, what I think the show does do good is they have that hint of urgency that, hey, we got to do something. And I don't mean, because someone's going to get shot or dead, but because there's evil around the world. And of course, that evil would be communism, which, some people may say is or isn't. I'll simply say that was definitely the prevalent theme. And I'm not saying this is a pro-America show, because they're not necessarily pursuing values that are American necessarily. What they're doing is they're squashing your enemy. So it's not a patriotic show, but communism is a very easy enemy to have and to talk about. And, there's all sorts of stuff with communism going back to the 20s and 30s when there's a big rise of it, how it affected Hollywood, how it came across here after World War II. We brought in scientists from World War II, and so communism spread that way because they brought their beliefs and stuff and whatever. The show's not probably going to get into it too much, but it does make it an interesting adult exercise in the things that were going on, like brainwashing. That was kind of creepy. They could have kept it dark in that episode 13 with Elena, but they didn't. But watching her, you're like, hey, that is kind of whatever. And then some of the episodes that you and I covered of The Prisoner, we talked about some big themes too with, spying and government and, how surveillance and stuff. And this episode has a little bit of that in there, but they make it more actiony. So I can't fault it. Now I'm wondering if this is going to be exactly the same for the remaining episodes we have. What do you think?
I think that it might be. I can't picture us really getting big changes. Because they know their footing now. I was talking the other day about speaking of shows with laugh tracks. Speaking of Frasier, new Frasier, I enjoy it. It's still finding its footing because it's the same show many years later, and they have to figure out what they're doing with new characters and stuff. This show has its footing. Mission Impossible has its footing. The question is, are they going to just walk themselves into a hole? I don't think they will. I enjoy it, but I think it's just the balance of what is entertaining this week. I hope you talked about him today, the bodybuilder.
Yeah.
I hope he gets something really to do soon, because he hasn't in quite a few episodes.
Yeah, and that's Willie. We haven't seen him for a bit, but I think he's going to be around a bit. I do like the fact that we don't know every episode which one of these core group of people are going to be a part of it. That gives them flexibility with the storytelling and, of course, with behind-the-scenes stuff and actually making it. So I think that's cool. And I think there's been talk recently, say, with the last Mission Impossible movie, the Part 1, Dead Reckoning, the woman in there, we had mentioned briefly that we thought, hey, she looked natural in it. Maybe she'll have an expanded role in the second film, or you see how people can kind of come in and out. And that's one thing that the movies did, I think, get from the TV show a little bit in terms of in spirit. You have a lot of key characters, but the Jerry Renemy character is not going to be in there forever. But after that movie, Part 4, you said, oh, maybe he could be in the 5th or 6th later or something, right? So I thought that was kind of neat. I don't look at it as the television show setting up any particular world or whatever. It's just a nice little vehicle. And I agree with you. I hope they don't walk themselves into a hole at the end of the season. But I do know that when Peter Graves comes on board, that's some of the Mission Impossible that I remember. But I couldn't tell you if it was early or later, because a lot of these people are on here for all 6, 7 seasons of it too. But I guess my final question would be for you real quickly here is, so far, since we're about halfway through season 1, and obviously, like Ed and chat, might give it a shot here and check it out. I'm just wondering, how long can they keep this up before we go, I've seen enough, I know what every episode is, and it still be entertaining? That's my question, and I don't know the answer to that yet, because so far it's been pretty good.
I think you'll get your answer really with, well, they're going to have to do a shakeup for season 2, because our leading man leaves and a new leading man comes in.
Yeah, and Spock himself, Mr. Leonard Nimoy, does become a part of the show for a couple of seasons. I'm aware of that too, as well as a young Sam Elliott. And there's other names here too, like Linda Day George and all that. So if we ever get into the rest of the seasons, it'll be interesting to talk about that. Right there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, episodes 13 and 14 of the original Mr. Impossible TV show. That's here on Xtreme TV, a part of the Xtreme Movie Show. We're getting ready to hop off of here and go on our stream, where we're going to talk about a movie called The Morning After from 1986, starring Jane Fonda. Yes, that Jane Fonda, and of course Jeff Bridges, and a neo-noir thriller 80s style that's actually very good to look at. It'll be interesting to see what we have to say, because I think it might be a first watch for all three of us, which is very rare here on the Xtreme Movie Show, and that's why we pick these things out too. So as a reminder, guys, if there's in particular movies or TV shows you want us to check out, you want us to give our thoughts on it too, let us know. Appreciate you guys showing up here too. Mission Impossible has been an interesting audience, because we only do TV occasionally, Professor Pixel and I, and so we may be branching out and doing a little bit more in addition to movies, but we're trying to season ones out of a lot of shows that we've had before, like Haven, all of Twin Peaks, because we loved it so much. We may be doing some shorter ones here in the future. Some possible things talked about have been TJ Hooker, Chucky. You never know, but definitely interested in trying out to see what hits there too. So see you guys over in the other stream. Look for that there on the Xtreme Movie Show homepage, and I'll see you guys in a moment. As always, thanks for listening. Have a good night and stay extreme. Yeah, you got to evolve as a series, Ed's saying, after that 3 seasons. Yeah, and Mission Impossible definitely does with their characters and the people involved, Peter Graves and all that too. So sometimes I think it's the showrunners and all that, and without getting too technical, I think that means a lot, because you're right. As we talked about in The Prisoner, which we did all of that, half the episodes probably really shouldn't have aired because they were boring, jazzy fist fights and filler. And if it was just 6, 7, 8 episodes, it probably would have been the greatest TV show of all time. But that is another conversation for all 16 episodes or whatever that we've already done. So check that out if you haven't already. All right, guys, have a good night.
Mission Impossible is not a Dan Curtis production.
But it should have been. Good night.